especially within the science, technology, and innovation space. And then on that very same aspect, then there's a lot of focus now on university industry partnerships. And I think the fact that we have a program that we want to be able to be relevant in the long term, the aspect of having university industry partnerships is very critical, such that the SGSP-IWRM program can, through either its content or content, I'm talking about both through the PhD program as well as the associated short courses, has a very specific direct linkages to industry partnerships. And normally these ones would be set around some kind of a model, technology transfer platforms or offices. And the whole idea is to promote the university research and the industry. This is now where you can then be able to have both the students as well as the professors who are doing applied research, basically interacting directly with the industry to address the specific challenges of industry. So there's a notion that it takes now for us to think about how, as I said, how we package and how we promote the SGSP program in line with, as I said, industry orientation, as well as national or regional interest. Normally, it would involve being able to engage, and I think this is part of what has already been done, to establish or to identify, what are normally called professors of practice, getting people that are in the industry to be able to participate in the program, in terms of either teaching or sharing outcomes from their research that they're doing within industry, hence enhancing the capacities that we are building within the program for the students. The aspect of facilitation of what are called spin-offs is also critical. I think applied research should not really come to the end of a PhD program or even just a postdoc. There should be a dedicated opportunity to see how that can be spun off and invested on for commercial gain in the long term. And then there's also opportunities for licensing of similar kind of opportunities, which should be coming from the program, which in my view is really a big win if that can be achieved at the end of the day. And this is over and above the publications as well as, whatever IP in terms of patenting that would come out of that. So there are examples of this. I won't really belabor on it, but I think that aspect of creating the linkages between the SGSP with the industry is really the center of it. And then secondly, to say that obviously the aspect of digital transformation, it comes into play, to say, how do we leverage the available technologies of the fourth industrial revolution to really ensure that the program is relevant. This comes from a teaching perspective, but also from how we go ahead in terms of implementing or doing the applied research for commercial gain. Having said that, I wanted to sort of reflect a bit on the issue of climate change. If we look at climate change, which from where I see it, it's really the bigger aspect around this thing, and it will affect everything. It affects issues of water resources. And if you look at current, how can I put it, current prospects or forecasts, in the short term, natural disasters and extreme weathers are really what will be what the world should be thinking of or worrying about. That's where the biggest risk is. But in the long term, failure to mitigate against climate change as well as climate adaptation are the first and second most highest global risks that the world faces. So taking those into context and looking at the impact that they will have, I think it's essential for us to be able to take stock, especially where we sit. The World Economic Forum has basically done some surveys, which puts, I think, Southern Africa to a large extent sits among those that have got the highest risk of failure to mitigate against climate change or even to mitigate against, to address issues of climate adaptation. So that basically says that there's going to be more need for us to have, so there's going to be more challenges to address in the context of the impact that which the climate change is going to have on the water resources. Hence, the need to ensure that we focus the program to be able to deal with those kind of issues. One key aspect that I think is most relevant is the adoption of open science approach. I think, as you may be aware, open science provide an opportunity to be able to progress some of these aspects to the larger extent. So I think with that, colleagues, I think we can then basically start speaking to the first question, having taken that as a background. So Renee, maybe, I don't know, you'll be describing this case, right?
I've pasted the questions.
Okay.
Into the chat
the questions
box,
that
so
are posted
on
the text. So I think as I don't know, I think maybe we can take them as they are presented. How can the SGSP-IWRM take full advantage of the opportunities presented by the digital technology in the creative industries? As I said, reflecting on current trends from the digital transformation as well as the fourth industrial revolution related technologies. The floor is open.
Dr. Tasheba, there's a hand.
Yes, Budzana, I've raised my hand so that I can say one or two things, just perhaps would help us to get started to add on to what you've said. I like this issue of focusing on innovation, because unless the program pushes the boundaries of innovation, I think its relevance could be, this will enhance its relevance, right? But I wanted to share one or two perspectives from my own observation that might be useful for us to bear in mind as we move forward on this. When you're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, you're talking about digital era that we are in. I must say that the water sector and has been very slow at adapting to, slow at benefiting from digital solutions, or incorporating digital solutions in our work. And IWRM, as far as I know, can benefit immensely by widespread adoption of this. Generally, government and government institutions are very slow at even adopting some of these things. I recall way back in the RSAP, when it came to monitoring water resources along we used to call it SADC High Coast. We used a little bit of digital technology there, but again, it was not as widespread. And then I also recall coming back to water supply in most towns, having water meters that, metering without a water meter going around is rarely practiced. So that for me shows that there's a lot of room to look at solutions, innovative solutions that can help us to digital-based solutions that can help us to move our agenda forward. And I think there's scope there. If we are able to move that agenda forward, and to get the water institutions, water players adopt new models, new digital approaches, that would help very much. But the background is the water sector generally is very, very slow at adopting digital solutions. And how we can And that also creates opportunities for us to provide those solutions. That's one. I like the issue that you've raised here of saying, of really focusing on the university industry partnership. I think that can help a lot. And again, we talk about it within IWRM, but is it happening? And can we, in the research, can we incorporate that? I think that's one area that we can quickly do something on. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Aramba. I think that's very much relevant, and I think I appreciate the fact that you spoke to the issue of the slowness of uptake of the currently available technologies, and I think the slower you become, the higher the chances are that we'll never be able to catch up with this particular initiatives. So I don't know whether there's any follow up on the same question regarding digital technologies. Yeah, while we're still at that one, then maybe I can still quickly basically reflect on one or two. I was going to cite an example. On I think a year ago we embarked on a review of I think it's the Southern African water, SunWatch it's called, and one thing that came out of that review, or the review of that program, is that there's need to put a lot of emphasis now on capacity building with an orientation to drive new ways of addressing the specific challenges of the water sector. And main emphasis were pretty much talking to this, to say, how do we ensure that current capacity building is built on the understanding of where the world is going, which is of a digital nature, ensuring that the skills that are imparted are essentially to be the ones that are going to run on those kind of technologies. If you take, for example, how we analyze data now and the approach that is being used when it comes to the big data and the data analytics platforms, it's on a totally different level, which basically will say that you have the opportunity and the ability to analyze data in a very short space of time, and then be able to also progress the outcome or the outputs of that. So that is just in highlighting one. And then secondly, the era of spatial analysis has pretty much changed. Whereas in the past there was need to be able to do a lot of field work on the ground, more and more data is becoming available, which is generated either through satellite imagery, which can then also then be processed. And I think issues to do with water availability, catchment areas, capacity to be able to hold water resources, all those really come into play. And I think it's quite important that we make a reflection on how the digital era can play a role in ensuring that we can be able to take advantage of these resources. Thank you. So any other inputs?
Yes, Dr. Tasheba, my hand is up.
Okay, go ahead, Renee.
Yes, I also wanted to make reference to some of the partnerships that we also found useful in this regard. Last year, NAST and Stellenbosch Water Institute, in partnership with NEPAD, AUDA NEPAD Sanwache, which is the Southern African Network of Water Centers of Excellence based at Stellenbosch. NAST is a member and focal point for Namibia. So we hosted the training course on water and wastewater treatment process management, capacity building on water and sanitation infrastructure assets maintenance. And one of the most valued sessions was the session that we convened on artificial intelligence in water and wastewater treatment. And I quite concur with the speakers that spoke before me to say there is that increased demand to see how digital technologies can actually help us optimize, can actually help us plan and inform decision-making processes, and can even help enhancing efficiency when it comes to our operations, be it at a local authority context or otherwise. And it's, as you indicated, for water resources management to help us with our planning and monitoring function. So I quite concur, and I think we increasingly need to identify such similar um, partners. Hopefully, Group 3 would draw out and expand on the necessary partnerships, but at least the partnership with AWDA, NEPAD, Sanwache group together with NAST and Stellenbosch Water Institute was able to articulate in a field that increasingly is becoming quite relevant. And 2-3 of our students are focusing on ICT solutions for the water sector. But it was equally interesting just to share what came out of our needs assessment. It also came out very strongly that we need to harness the fourth industrial revolution in order to improve our water supply efficiency, even to look into issues of groundwater monitoring. It also came up on how to enhance our wastewater treatment processes in order for us to also, like what Dr. Thomas referred to, around non-revenue water. If we can enhance and optimize our water metering, we can actually reduce non-revenue water in that regard. So it's just to bring it out that your sentiments have been echoed in other consultations, that artificial intelligence and Internet of Things is very critical for this space, and we should increasingly adopt it and see how it can be infused for the caliber of PhD candidates that we are producing. Thank you.
Thank you for that submission, Rennie. I see Prof. Charamba has got his hand up. Go ahead, Prof.
Yeah, we're just brainstorming here. I was just wondering, I think this issue of the fourth industrial revolution is very important. Has anyone anywhere done any kind of mapping on where opportunities are, where the water sector can go along with others and adopt digital solutions just in the water? So has any mapping been done? I think it's important to identify where these opportunities are. That's one point I wanted to just mention here. Then there's another point, building onto the point that we talked about earlier on, climate change, big issue for IWRM and the water sector. Well, previously we used to say that climate change is felt most through water, but really the data to demonstrate that was really never there. And of course, without evidence, good evidence, it's very difficult for policymakers to make any policies in this direction or that direction. And again, I agree with you, Southern Africa seems to be most impacted, but we need to pick it up here at home to see what impact, what are the models, or what impact this climate change is likely to have, and bring it down to water demand. And we can see already that there are a lot of
right. I don't know if there's any takers.
Come again, Dr. Tasheba. We didn't hear your intervention.
Colleagues, I don't know if there's any inputs to the last suggestion by Prof. Charamba.
I think you are still elaborating.
Yes, I was just concluding here to say that we need to bring it down and look at demand. Of course, climate change will reduce water availability, maybe. And then at the same time, there's the issue of demand. that we need to understand better. You know, there's the element of urbanization, which really will place a lot of stress on water, but also increased food production. But also there are other promising technologies around water to produce more food,
I was
but
just
also
hoping
to
that maybe
manage demand.
there'll be any. I think the question was: is there any mapping of some of these solutions in the water sector, or where there's currently been identified opportunities? From what I've picked up, there's not much per se on the water sector. But I think from a climate change perspective, there's quite a number, and I think climate change is one of the biggest drivers of water resources in terms of availability. So there'll be quite a few that can be reflected on from that perspective. I'm still trying to see if we can be able to get any more inputs from colleagues, especially still on the first one. I don't know, from a time perspective, we might not be doing so well, so we might need to move to the next question.
There is a contribution in the chat from
Rennie,
Dr.
how are you doing on time?
We are supposed to go back at 12, but there is a suggestion in the chat from Dr. Lirwai responding to the first question, where you were saying they've established a digital solutions portfolio within IMWI, Southern and West Africa. So maybe we need to pursue that conversation with him. He's just leaving the meeting in the next 10 minutes. But I'll just read contribution on the first question. And I think there was also something that Professor Chiramba had mentioned, that we need to understand how urbanization will impact food systems, and he got interrupted then. So maybe you could just finish that particular narrative so that we can capture it as rapporteurs to say what was the end part of that contribution around how we should better understand urbanization and how digital technologies could probably play a role in being solutions to some of our challenges in that space. Can Dr. Chiramba just wrap it up so that I can capture it accurately? Thank you.
No, I was almost finished when I said that demand, we need to look at demand much more carefully, because there are these big phenomenon like water demand in urban areas, but also demand for food because population is growing, but also then also the other opportunities that are there in food security, reducing the amount of water, the other developments there, but also even in water supply, the other developments that are like what is it? The new water that people were talking about. What are the implications of these in terms of then moving forward? Over to you.
Dr. Tasheba, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. The reason it appears like now I'm distracted, I'm gonna actually request that maybe you hold the fort for me, because I had this meeting that was now scheduled to start around now, and they're calling me. But in any case, I was thinking that maybe we can now quickly address the second question. If colleagues are in agreement.
Yes, Chief, we can proceed.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, the second question I thought was a bit more, yeah, was a bit more focused on solutions. And I think one thing that I wanted to bring out here is that there is a specific element of a number of technologies that are being brought into the space, which are being commercialized in the water sector. The one that I know that I can be able to cite as an example is the one that speaks to being able to develop new technologies that can be commercialized. There is a work that has been done, I think it's in East Africa, by a Professor Hilonga, if I'm not mistaken, who has been able to develop a very novel and innovative solution around water treatments at localized level, where you don't need a whole lot of equipment or infrastructure. And it became a very, very unique and a very good business proposition that is now in the commercial domain. So I think along the same line of thinking, I just wanted to see maybe we can be able to reflect on how we can be able to position the SGSP to ensure that we come up with such kind of solutions, relevant, addressing specific challenges, but also creating the right kind of impact. So maybe we can start with that one. Rene, I think you can go ahead.
Oh, my hand wasn't up, sir. Okay, I was still writing my notes from the previous component of it. But we are having discussions with the United Nations University to understand how we can also come up with frugal innovations for the water and sanitation sector. And it speaks to probably what you are proposing now, Dr. Tasheba, to say at times they don't have to be complicated, complex innovations that require huge capital investments, but we can also be looking at those kind of frugal innovations that we can really put forward, and also we can bring in the element of our youth to say how can the youth be involved in coming up with some of these frugal innovations, and what support do they need, what kind of conversations need to happen to bridge the silo gap, the gaps between our entrepreneurs, our techpreneurs, and our professionals within the water space. Because increasingly, if we bridge those divides, we'll be able to tap into the knowledge that this particular group can bring to the water sector. So I'll still put it out there as an opportunity to be pursued, to say how can we really promote some of these frugal innovations that are quite relevant to our local context, that can really address local level problems that have high impact. Thank you, Chair. Over to you.
Thanks, Rene. I see your hand is still up. I don't know whether Prof wants to come in.
Yes, for me, it was just a quick observation. From what you said earlier on, Udzanani, this university industry partnership is key to this, to answering the second question for me, right? The first one deals with how can we and where and what can we do, or where can this innovation come from, right? And the second one is, once you have it, how do you then pass it on for industry to pick up and commercialize it? And that's where I think your suggestion of university industry partnership is very valid. Perhaps this whole issue of intellectual property need to be discussed a little bit. How that is done, maybe some of us lack too much knowledge about it, but I think getting them registered from our part of the world, some of these innovations is always cumbersome. How can we make it easy for those that we are supporting to innovate to get their innovations then registered? Over to you.
Yeah, I don't know whether anybody wants to latch on the same discussion around university industry partnership, because I was bringing them up because of being able to create relevance out of what comes out of the program. And obviously, there's need for having structures. I talked about having your tech transfer platforms, your commercialization support systems, potential development of licensing frameworks. I think all those that come into play if we are thinking about having spin-outs out of the program, which is really where commercialization would essentially take place. Any more comments, colleagues?
Yeah, I wanted that question that we've asked. Perhaps our colleagues from government, Dr. Ngurare, may be able to help us on how he engages industry and how he sees the water sector benefiting from the fourth revolution, and how government can support this university industry partnership. It would be interesting to hear from his perspective on that.
Thank you. Dr. Ngurare? I don't think that Dr. Ngurare is responsive. Rene, I think you're logged on twice, huh?
Yes, because the other one has got a very shaky connection. So I'm actually using my cell phone for this meeting. So the computer is there. That's why at times I forget to drop my hand because the hand is on the computer, the voice is on the phone. Yes, but it's me on both. I'm keeping both so that if one fails, I can quickly latch onto my alternative gadget.
You talked a little bit about the seminars and all other courses that you offer to also people from industry. How do you see this partnership being established? Well, I think it's very important in terms of moving things forward. Is there a formal platform, or what? How do you think? How do you see it?
Currently, the SASCA Research Chair in Water Resources, Quantity and Availability, his work plan actually speaks to having those platforms so that our colloquiums in the long term now go beyond these safe spaces between the students to starting to engage what is coming out of their research in order to start influencing at a very early age the uptake of some of these solutions, and to see to what extent some of these ideas can also be scaled and taken to market or commercialized. So there is a very strong move in this phase of the project now to start really opening up and exploring in a very meaningful way the kind of partnerships that will enable that to happen. So you realize our follow-up platforms for student presentations will no longer just be closed with their supervisors, but we are opening up to policymakers, practitioners, and industry partners. There is also discussions internally not yet concretized and approved to consider having an industry chair, because we have got a research chair that is sitting within academia, Professor Moalafi, and there is questions and discussions that are ongoing on if there is merit to have actually an industry chair that could really bring our relationship and collaboration closer. And the industry chair would then spearhead and start opening up pathways for us to have conversations with industry on all our components actually of the program, not just the research component, but increasingly also the outputs that are coming and how best they can be packaged in order for us to be able to create the so desired impact. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thanks, Rani. So I don't know. It looks like most of the other colleagues are not here now. I don't know whether it because I thought it would have been good to then basically get all the I don't know, all the inputs and then just basically compare. What time are we supposed to report back, Rani?
We are supposed to convene back at 12 o'clock, so we've got about 25 minutes to go.
25 minutes to go. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I realized that perhaps because it's just us discussing, I don't know. From my side, I think most of the points I would have put out. Like I said, I'd done a short presentation, but it had some snippets of what we just discussed in terms of approach or in terms of what can be done. I can still send it to you, and then we see how we can use that to complement all the other discussions.
That will also help me in consolidating the notes from the session. So if we are ready to reconvene, I can use this moment to just clean up my report back.
Yeah. So I'll send you the presentation. But like I said, it highlights, in my view, what I think are the big drivers in terms of the water sector. And at the top of it, like I said, is climate. And then climate is associated with climate risk. And we are sitting in a very precarious position in the region insofar as climate change is concerned. So we have the list of capabilities of addressing adaptation and mitigation issues in the region, and as such, that means pressing changes, pressing pressures on the water sector. Hence the need now for those technologies. Hence the need now to be innovative in terms of our capacity building to get the kind of resources that will tackle head on the challenges in the water sector that are brought about by climate change. Utilizing, as you said, those digital technologies. I mean, like I said, for me, it's your AI, your data analytics, and your Internet of Things, comes at the top. Being able to monitor water resources, remotely becomes the most critical aspect, and being able to forecast also becomes very useful. So I think those ones would be really sort of my high-level kind of things. But I think now, from a commercializing perspective, it's also that kind of mindset change to say, our graduates are looking at not just publishing the PhDs, but really getting into the nitty-gritties of understanding industry, the invest-industry partnership, working with industry to already identify opportunities for developing enterprises, which can then be able to tackle challenges in the water sector. Yeah. So I think we can wrap it up around there, and then I can send you this presentation now.
I think that would be very useful. I just wanted to raise one more issue. I understand too little. I understand, I don't quite understand everything about it, but what I know is that, coming up with innovative ideas is one thing. Getting them to a level that a company or the private sector picks it up and begins to make money out of it is quite another. And in between, there are quite a number of things that might need to be done, like testing the technologies, making them, piloting them, making them, developing them further, and so on. Is there? How do we go about that? How do we overcome that gap until we get to commercialization? And also, getting the private sector involved also assumes that there is an opportunity of money to be made. So answering all those questions might be worthwhile to reflect on. That was my.
Colleagues, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Renin. And I also heard what Prof was putting across. Go ahead.
Okay, no, that's well noted. I wasn't too sure whether I just muted myself or mute. I was just asking to say, as we are looking into phase two, if we can just take this opportunity, since we're a very small group of stakeholders, looking into phase two of SGSP, how can we incorporate the issue of innovation into the new or the second cohort, for example? Because the usual cycle for PhD recruitment of PhD fellows, at times I feel the process of researchers in applied research and the process for the cycle for innovation are a bit different. How can we modify our processes in order for us to be able to really integrate the issue of innovation from ideation until we look at market and expansion, etc. How can that actually pan out within the scope of a PhD program? Any ideas around the design of SGSP? How can we modify the design of the program to strengthen the issue of innovation and entrepreneurship? Any ideas around that?
Yeah, Renee, I think for me, then that speaks to what what we can bring in is what I call what is normally called enterprise culture. I don't know how that would be factored in, but enterprise culture basically means that, within the program from the onset, you ensure that they're not only studying hardcore they're not mainly focused on your semester kind of structured classes. They have opportunities of interacting with industry. I talked about professors of practice, where they can be able to interact with them, where they can appreciate real life challenges and apply themselves even in doing their PhD to address those. So part of what comes out is not just publications, but probably things like patents, prototypes, which can then be taken to different levels, so that by the time they come out of the program, they've got a diverse portfolio in terms of what they can do.
Okay. No, that is well noted, because I was really looking out for that practical element around the design of the program, because thinking of the end is good in terms of the change we want to see, but it's equally important to think of the process that needs to be in place in order for that change to be realized. No, thank you for that input. Much appreciated.
All right. What I like that very much, Zanani, what you've just talked about, um, because up to now, the students that are studying, up to a while ago, I don't know those we have in this program, they all look forward to be employed in government. Or they're not really that they're generating ideas or innovations that can be patented and that they could pick up and run with it in the private sector. I think that's we've not I've not we've not gotten to that. So I think it's something that we need to reflect on, and on how we can incorporate that culture in the students. But one thing that comes to my mind is we talked about, I don't know whether it's secondment or this mobility you're talking about. For me, I think it should include getting these people talking to, working with or within the private sector in some instances where something that we can clearly see that it can lead to some form of innovation that can be commercialized. Then maybe placing those people working on such topics with institutions that can help them to move it forward, to develop it and move it forward would be very helpful. So just being innovative on where we place these students and to get some further guidance on what on the products that are developing. Over to you.
Right. Okay.
You will also be surprised that some of the private sector, when they see that there's something that can come out of it, they might actually put money into it. And again, within the context of your sustainability, Rennie, it might be worthwhile to see within that context how you can build onto the resources from the private sector there and some of the initiatives. Over to you.
Great. No, this one is noted. How can we involve the private sector in our graduate studies program so that we actually end up forging the kind of partnerships? We win partnerships, they bring in resources to support the research and innovation, and we give them solutions. I think I think that's a key message to note. Thank you, Prof.
Also to note that the fourth industrial revolution in the water sector, IWRM, people think that is something that happens next door. It's not something that they should be engaged in and begin to think deeply on what it means for them. I think that I don't know how we can get the water sector to think about that.
To shift mindsets, it will take time, but I think it starts with the conversations and the piloting, and we can then present evidence that we've tried it and it works. I'll take the example of NAM Water. NEPA Sanwache gave us a very small grant. It was only 150,000 rands for a small research project for master students. The key findings from the research that was done by those master students influenced NAM Water to actually then commission some research to actually follow through on those on the solution, the recommendations that came from just a master student's research. So I think we underestimate how the small efforts can lead to a big fire. And I think NAM Water, from an investment of 150,000 from NEPA Sanwache, NAM Water wants to put in 2 million to build the infrastructure for them to better understand their resources. A very strong, I think it's a spatial planning platform that they're trying to establish to help them plan and monitor water resources. But it started with a very small stream of funding for a master student who was trying to look at how can ICT be used to support NAM Water in terms of their planning processes, that water infrastructure planning and management. And the findings have pushed NAM Water to invest more on that subject, to say, okay, can we now have at least now a team of experts that can take the recommendations and even really investigate and come up with plausible solutions that can address the shortcomings in their organization. So it will take time. Back to you, Prof. Chiramba, to say how do we do it? But it starts with these small conversations and small resources being allocated to pilot test it, and slowly we will see it spreading and mindsets being transformed over time. Or at least I'm optimistic that will happen.
Yeah, so I think mindset change and enterprise culture. I think that's really what will drive it.
Yeah.
So Rene, were you saying that you would want to now maybe compile?
I'm actually wondering if I can actually compile a slide in this few minutes, because it's quite a lot that came out. I was taking notes, but I'll use this 10 minutes before we reconvene if I can quickly put together a slide. If time doesn't permit, I'll then just revert to reading out what came out of our discussion.
Okay, no, that's fine then.
Yeah. But thank you so much for the rich inputs. This really is helpful. And it's just the beginning of it, because after the first draft is put together, people can then reflect on something written and reflect on what else needs to be incorporated.
Yeah, and what kind of funding we can source for it here.
Indeed.
It's okay. So you will put the PowerPoint, the information together, and who's the nanny you present, or who's going to present? Rennie?
The chair, would you want to present?
I think I'll delegate to you to present, Rennie. I actually sent you the presentation.
That is in order. I hope I can summarize.
Represent us.
That is in
Thank
order.
you.
That time done, I'll also invite if there are additional comments that probably I would have omitted, so that they can have a full picture. So that's in order. I can present.
Absolutely.
Right.
Then very good. We shall then wait. We will be joining the group now, the workshop in 10 minutes. Over to you then. Thank you.
Okay.
See you then.
Thank you, colleagues.